Well, certainly he was a low profile guy. That's
Oh
for
boy,
sure.
that's for sure. Yes. Oh, thank you there, Mr. Photographer guy. Thank you.
Well, this is quite a place.
Yeah.
Have you seen the ads that they have on TV now when you're watching the football?
Oh yes, yeah.
Those things are not cheap.
No, no. Well, they put a lot of money back into this place. They're the only ones that ever made it work.
Is it new owners or relatively?
No, they've had it about 20 years now.
Oh yeah.
But it was all kinds of stuff over the years, and nobody ever used the racing theme, the thing that God gave them. Yeah. And but they saw the potential of this place.
4 minutes until showtime.
A museum unto itself.
Well, it's I'm thrilled to do this for you, or with us, I should say, not for you, not for me, but for whatever.
Yes, sir.
And I always enjoyed doing these kinds of things, but they were always, when I was working, an imposition.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Now that I don't work, so of course not.
Yeah.
But it was Lanky Pushy used to say Group 44 racing team and Group 44 Racing Inc. Public Relations and sometimes racing team. Because we worked. I wondered where that came from. Thank you very much.
I'll be right back.
3 minutes until showtime.
What the hell happened? You okay? Everybody all right?
That fella that just came in, that's Dick Kane. He used to be mayor of Daytona.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah?
Yeah, I know him very well. He was going to be my gas man.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, he was going to be my gas man.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. In that thing that Bill France cooked up.
Yeah. Oh, well, he was always into something, wasn't he? Old Big Bill?
Huh?
Big Bill was always cooking up something, wasn't he?
Well, yes. That's quite a story.
2 minutes until showtime.
At a cocktail party at his house.
Oh.
Before.
There we go. Thank you. Huh? What? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, this guy, to me, he's like a god. This is Mr. Bob Tullius, sports car racer extraordinaire. Absolutely. We're going to have fun if it kills us, right?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Oh. 1 minute until showtime.
See, right about now, I feel like an astronaut. 1 minute till liftoff, you know? Absolutely.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
from the world's most famous beach, from where beach racing began. It's the Legends of Racing radio show, live from racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill in Ponce Inlet, Florida. The Legends of Racing radio show, and your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here at the beautiful North Turn Restaurant on the beautiful Daytona Beach in the middle of the beautiful state of Florida. Everything's beautiful, right? I think there was a song by that name, wasn't there? Something like that, yeah. It's so great to be back here. Yeah, we took that little vacation last week, and I got to say, Roland Villa did a fantastic job. How about a little applause for Roland? He was awesome. And Dan Smith and Suzanne Heddy, they were a wealth of knowledge. I hope you all enjoyed that. So we're going to try to keep Roland's appearances to a minimum, though. You know, I don't want to get insecure about my position here. But anyway, today I have been looking forward to this for a long time. This is a guy that I have idolized since I was a kid because he drove a Dodge Dart. He raced, and he won with a Dodge Dart. And at the time, Dodge Dart, who's going to race those things? But he's a guy that really got my attention. And he has to be arguably one of the top sports car road course drivers of all time, in my opinion. And if you want to fight about it, I'd be happy to. This is Mr. Bob Tullius.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Buzz.
Yeah, we are tickled to death to have you here, and we understand that you're a neighbor of ours now, right?
Well, I live in Port Orange at the fly-in, but I have a airplane hangar at Messier Air Park in Edgewater. So, yes, I'm very much a part of this, and I moved here 2-3 years ago to be with my beautiful family, my son, who's my best friend, and his bride, Carmen, and she's the mother of my 4 grandsons, believe that or not.
And looking at Russ and Carmen, definitely grandkids. Yeah, Carmen, definitely. Russ, I think you got the better end of that deal, buddy.
And I also have with me Matt Guineo, who is a young man that works with me at my hangar, and he keeps me out of the bars.
out of bars? Is that
well,
right?
in the bars, actually, I should say.
Okay. Yes. Well, Russ, I think, has competed in almost every form of motorsport. Sitting down there one day in the hangar chatting with him about his background, I was shocked to see how many forms of racing that he actually was involved in. You didn't start off in sporty cars. You kind of got the bug from dirt track, didn't you?
Well, I drove a 1937 Ford Coupe on a dirt half-mile oval in Rochester, New York in 1946, I think. And I got beat by a Crosley hotshot.
Oh, no. Really? Oh, jeez. But that kind of gave you drive to get in there and dig a little deeper, right?
Well, actually, I was born to do what I did, and so I worked at trying to find my niche in life, and I did one day at Marlboro Racetrack, a most sports car hub. I couldn't get into the stock cars at the time because I wasn't a mechanic, and I couldn't afford to have somebody build me a car in those days. And this was in the mid-40s, and so I decided to, when I had the opportunity, I moved to Washington, D.C. with the Eastman Kodak Company, and I became friends with a couple of SCCA guys. And I went to SCCA driver's school with a TR3 that I had purchased, and I went to their SCCA's driver's school one weekend, which was 2 or 3 days, and I wore out a complete set of tires. and they couldn't have practice races, so they had practice starts, which started the race around the racetrack and got a checkered flag after the first race or first lap. And I was fortunate enough to win that race. Oh. But that fast forward about 50 years, and the last race that I drove was in here at Daytona at the Eastern Airlines 300 3-hour race in 1986, and I won with a GTP car, a 225-mile-an-hour car, which put bookends to my career as a race car driver. It was first race and last race. How about that?
Not too many folks can say that. That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the cars definitely progressed technologically over the years, didn't they? From that first race. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Now, did you say you ran your first race in a Triumph?
Yes. First in my TR3.
Yeah.
And last race in a GTP car, as I said, there's a 225 mile an hour piece, and I still have a couple of them, and one of which is on display in my hangar over at Massey Air Park, and everybody is invited anytime to come and visit. Some antique airplanes and such. Buzz has been there, and he can attest to the worth of coming to see him.
It is absolutely incredible. His own little mini museum there. And he kind of had the best of both worlds, auto racing and aviation. World War II warbirds. We'll be getting into that a little bit later on, but that was kind of a little aside to Bob's life. But it seemed like everything you touched was successful. Everything worked out real well for you over the years, didn't it?
Well, I was fortunate enough to pick the right places at the right time. That's what life is all about, isn't it? About being at the right place at the right time.
Yep.
And I had a good sales background with Eastman Kodak Company. 1963, and my boss came. I was stationed in Washington, at a territory out of Washington, a sales manager for one of those divisions, and I was racing my TR3 and TR4 and all over the East Coast and Midwest. And I was using my company car for a tow car. That was a little shaky there.
Did they know about that?
Well, I was trying to keep it on low key, but I started to get some publicity. And my boss, who was in Rochester, New York, saw this publicity, and he wasn't a racing enthusiast. So one day, after I had won the first national championship, actually the second perhaps, but he called me up one day and said, "Do you suppose you could manage a little work into your racing schedule?" And I said, no. and therefore, I was unemployed at this point, and I was making a very healthy salary at Eastman Kodak Company. And my then Russ's mother wasn't very happy at my having to not be employed, but I fixed that.
But you had to get a tow car then, didn't you? Couldn't use a company car.
As a matter of fact, I did. I bought a 1961 Ford, and this was in '63. So,
yeah. Well, but that sports car racing, the road course racing, it just kind of grabbed you right off the bat, didn't it?
Well, it was something that I could participate in without a terrible expenditure. I was at the time working for Kodak, and I had a family. Russ, and I had bought a new house and that sort of thing, and I was I couldn't afford to. There was no. I didn't know about things like this. There came a time when you could, as a potential race car driver, you could buy a ride places. You know about that now, but in my early days, there was no such thing as buying a ride that I knew of, anyhow, and so I had to create my own ride, and I did so with a TR3 at the first part. And then in 1962, Triumph decided that they wanted to have a couple of cars in an SCCA competition. And they gave two brand new TR4s. That's the first year they came out. And they gave two brand new TR4s to a couple of guys that I didn't know at all who were very good TR3 drivers. And I found out about that. This was '62 was my first year of real sports car racing. I'd gone through the driver school and raced my TR3, and I had raced my TR3 and here at Daytona for the first time in February of 1962, and finished second. And the company had given these two TR4s to a couple of guys who were totally unsuccessful, and I went to visit with the company in New York City, and I told them I was going to win the championship, and they just looked at me like, this is a big blowhard from somewhere. And the long and short of it is, I did win the national championship, and they gave me a new TR4.
Nice. You showed them. Well, you and in Triumph, you had a really nice, close relationship for a number of years, didn't you?
Well, I had the good fortune of having British car sponsors for a very long time. As a matter of fact, I had British car sponsors from 1962 until 1987. That's a long-term sponsorship by anybody's imagination. Maybe there have been a couple of NASCAR things that have been as long, but I had them for a very long time. At Quaker State Oil Refining Company for 18 years as a sponsor, and I had Goodyear for 25 or more years, and that doesn't happen very often in this industry, as you well know.
Well, what was nice about the folks that were sponsoring you, you always gave them their money's worth. You always went overboard to promote them. You were successful, so they were getting their name out in front of everyone. So it was a real nice relationship, wasn't it?
Well, as I said, it lasted for a long time, so they must have been happy the way we did it. And as I said earlier to someone, Lanky Fushi, my crew chief for 25 years, who I love dearly, used to describe Group 44 Incorporated as a public relation firm and a sometimes race team.
But Group 44 was really a pioneer in the internal promotion of the sponsor. Most of the guys would take the money, they throw it into the car, they go race, and that was it. But Bob and his group knew that you really had to massage the sponsor and really give them their money's worth. And you really kind of broke ground in that realm, didn't you?
Well, yes. No one was doing what he did in Group 44 Incorporated. Nobody at Indy, nobody in NASCAR, nobody in sports car racing, but I had a full-time public relations person who went every race that we went to, and we did a lot of races in 1 year. Every race we went to, he went a week before the race, contacted every television, radio, and newspaper, and made appointments for me to make appearances and interviews such as this, Buzz, and he did all that, and I went a week before the race and did all those things. We became a nationally known race team in the mid-'60s when nobody in NASCAR, nobody in Indy, nobody had done that. And we all wore proper uniforms. We all went together to dinner at night. We all had blazers and ties and coats. And every place that my public relations man did, he subscribed to the newspaper for the next 3 days, and for the next week we kept getting newspapers, and his job was to put together, as well as being the PR guy, he had to put together a scrapbook, and that scrapbook got to be this thick for one season.
Oh my gosh.
And we used that scrapbook to prove to our clients that what we were doing was benefiting them, and it worked every time. And as I said, I had Quaker State for 18 years, British Leyland for 25 or 6, Goodyear for all that period, and nobody was unhappy with what we did, and it taught the industry how to make it worthwhile to sponsors. And from that, they're still doing it exactly that way this year in both Indy and NASCAR and drag racing, for that matter.
Yeah, and you guys are really the trailblazers, weren't you?
We were the guys that set. Well, I don't know quite how to describe it, because I know that the Indy people weren't looking at us and the NASCAR people weren't looking at us, but in perpetuity, that's what they are doing now, and we did it long before they ever thought how to do it.
Amazing. We're going to take a quick pit stop here for a minute or two. No, actually, it'll be about a minute, won't it? Okay. And we'll be right back.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Welcome to Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. You're right in the middle of all the action. Daytona International Speedway, the airport, One Daytona, Florida's newest entertainment and retail destination, and of course, the world's most famous beach. You'll love our newly remodeled 1- and 2-bedroom suites, along with our popular King Studios. You won't need your full kitchen, as Homewood Suites Daytona serves up complimentary breakfast and evening social. It's like home away from home. Go to HomewoodDaytona.com for Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you, folks. We're back here at the North Turn with the great Bob Tullius. And yeah, I'll tell you what, that Homewood Suites, Patrick Sullivan and his guys really will take care of you. We meet there every week for our weekly meetings, get a free breakfast. It's not one of these little rinky-dink continental breakfast things, where you get a bagel and this is a big deal with meat and eggs and fruit and it's just a heck of a deal. And you're only steps from the Speedway, right around the corner from the airport. You're right across the street from Daytona 1. So I would behoove you, if you have any friends coming into town, let them know about Homewood Suites. They are fantastic folks. Absolutely. We're going to do something a little bit different right about now. We have a really, really, really good question from our audience. Is Tony here? Tony, your timing on this is perfect because I was just going to segue into that chapter of Bob's life. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, Tony.
How you doing? The Group 44 Triumphs and Jags were just handsome cars. But what is the story on the Dodge Dart? I mean, how did you decide to race one? Was the factory involved? What's the story?
Okay. That was the first year of the Trans Am.
Thank you.
Was in 1966. And early on, the first race was to be in Sebring. And the Chrysler Corporation, the Plymouth people, had put together a race team they called Team Starfish. And that was all done by a guy named Scott Harvey. And they had put together this team, and they were working on putting it together for the first race of the Trans Am ever in Sebring. Well, the Dodge people found out about it, and they were miffed because they didn't get to participate in this thing. And the head of the Dodge Public Relations, can't think of his name, but his number one guy was a guy named Moon Mullins. and they decided they needed someone to participate. Dodge did, as well as. So they asked Scott Harvey who they should get. And Scott and I had been acquainted, but we're not big friends. But he knew how capable we were. We were racing Triumphs only at the time. And he suggested to Dodge that they take us. Well, they did. We prepared a car, and we came to Sebring the first race. And it was the first race that we had solicited Quaker State for a tractor trailer. And they were willing to participate. And that's another story, long story. We don't have an hour here. We only have an hour here.
we can have round 2 one day, though.
Well, we could do that. But anyhow, we came to Sebring, and I was the third member of the Chrysler team, so to speak. Two Barracudas and one Dart. And Scott Harvey, before the race, the team orders were that I was going to run third behind them, whatever, stay and be a good team guy. And so the race came along, and I think I qualified like maybe 4th or 5th, maybe. And A.J. Foyt was on the front row with one of our Barracudas. And the race started, and I was to just mosey along behind the rest of them. And A.J. got going pretty good. We had a Mustang. It was from Texas. He was driving it for somebody. And he got away from the Barracudas who were running second and third, and I was fourth. And I let that happen for a little while, and I didn't have any problem with doing that because I was a team guy. I played football in my lifetime, and I knew about teamwork. And but A.J. was getting away from these two guys in the front. So I finally decided, to hell with the team orders. So I passed the two Barracudas and set out for A.J. and caught him and passed him. and won the race.
Bravo. Yay.
And it was the first Trans Am race ever in 1966 with a Dodge Dart. And everybody says, Dodge Dart, are you kidding? Anyhow, that was the beginning. For the year, we finished second in points. And we won the Marlboro 12-hour with it, and we won a couple of other races with it. But Dodge Dart was fine. But 1967, I got to add this little bit to that. Now, that was Dodge decided they weren't going to participate in the Trans Am that following year, which was a bitter disappointment to me. Anyhow, he came to Daytona for the first race of 1967, and everybody was here. AJ was here, Mark Donahue, everybody you can think of. Let me think. Russ, where are you? Peter Revson was here. Yeah. Peter Gregg, and was
Like anybody who's anybody.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah. Everybody. Mercury was here with 2 cars. Ford was here with 2 cars.
Bud Moore's cars, right?
Yes, right. And I'm trying to think of who else was here, but all the hot shoes were here. And I qualified something like 7th or 8th, I think, something like that. But halfway through the race, I was leading and won the race here in Daytona.
Yeah. Well, being an impressionable young race fan in Daytona, that race, that win, is what really opened my eyes to Bob Tullius. I said, what? This guy's running a Dodge? Holy cow, a Dart? This is amazing. So, man, that's when my lights came on as far as you're concerned. I've been a huge fan ever since, and that's why it's such an honor to have you here today.
Well, that brings me to the story about my Dodge Dart here. Following the race, Bill Sr. Came to me and said, how would you like to drive in the Daytona 500? And of course, that would have been the dream of I'm a stock car. I want to give you the wrong idea about my sports car thing, because that was truly my vocation. But my avocation would have been to drive a NASCAR Grand National car, and I always dreamed about being able to do that. But it wasn't something I couldn't go to the races with my helmet in my hand. I didn't have time for that. Anyhow, he asked me if I'd like to drive Grand National car, and I said yes. Of course I said yes.
Yeah, of course.
So he arranged for me to have a Pontiac that was owned by a local person, and Russ, who was it?
Vernon Blank.
Vernon Blank.
There you go.
Yes.
He used to work for Smokey.
Okay. Well, he had this Pontiac, and Senior decided that I was going to drive that car, so he paid Vernon to get me into this car. Well, it was all supposed to be a PR thing, and he organized a all-female pit crew.
Oh,
and
nice.
Guess who was the head gas man of that?
Who's that?
He's sitting right there.
Oh, my gosh. That's Richard Kane, former mayor of Daytona Beach.
Dick Kane. I met Dick at his house. He had a cocktail party before the race, and Bill Sr. was there. And I got to know Bill Sr. Not only that time, but another time, which will be another part of another story, perhaps. But we had a grand time thinking about that, didn't we? And when I went to drive the car the first time, Vernon, it was not a bad car, actually. And he put me in the car, and I went out to practice. And they were qualifying, I think, about that time. 184, would you think?
Yeah, a little higher than that. Yeah,
maybe. Anyhow, we were about 3 or 4 miles an hour slower than they were. Only he was excited because I had gone out and did about 10 or 15 laps, and we came in and we were maybe 3 or 4 miles an hour slower than the hot shoes. And he said, he said to me, boy, we're going to be in good shape when you really get on it. And I said, Vernon, it ain't no more. There ain't no more. I had my foot in it the whole time. and so it goes. We did the 25, and I got whacked by somebody coming in the middle of turn 3 and 4 and spun it out and didn't make the final. So I never drove the race. But it was great fun to be amongst those guys. And I got to be friends at that point with Bobby Ellison, good friends, been friends with him for years. Tiny and I were good friends for a long time, and I knew all the guys that were racing at that time. And it was a fun experience. And I became acquainted at that point with Buck Baker. And that's another story that if you ever want to hear it, that's fine. But Buck and I became close friends. I used to go to the races with him in his Baron, and it was a good man. Aren't you glad you asked that question? Thank you.
Oh, what's very interesting, too, is one year, I believe it's for the 24 hours, Buck Baker and Bob were co-drivers in a little Ford Cortina. You remember that?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
And Buck, I don't think Buck had ever driven a road race before, and a Ford Cortina is a right-hand drive car, and he didn't know what the hell to do in that thing. I was like 10 seconds a lap faster than he was. Anyhow, he came in one time, and he'd been really slow in this particular lap, and I said, what happened? He said, I'm not sure, but I knew I was in trouble when I felt the breeze on the back of my neck. Anyhow, after that, Buzz and I became good friends, we became good friends, Buck and I, and in fact drove against each other in the Grand Am Series some years later, and he tried very hard to get me a ride in a Grand American car, but wasn't successful. But he and I were friends for a long time, and I knew Buddy when he was only 15.
Oh, my. Yeah, well, now Buck is in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Sure.
And you're in quite a few Hall of Fames yourself, too, aren't you, Bob?
4.
Uh-huh. And most recently... Yeah,
in the sports car, or the Road Racing Hall of Fame of America, which was, and the banquet and the induction was here in Daytona at the old Hilton Hotel, which is now what?
Oh, yeah, that's what is it, the Plaza Resort?
Yeah.
Does that sound about right?
Anyhow, I'm in the...
okay, the Shores Resort. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the Hall of Fame is here at the Speedway, the National Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. So he's like more than a neighbor. You know, he's a neighbor in citizenship and also as a luminary, right? And I can't wait to see your display out there. That's going to be something.
The other 3 were Sports Car Club of America, which I treasure very much, as well as the road racing thing, and the Sebring Hall of Fame, and the British Car Sports Cars Hall of Fame.
Really neat. I'm sorry.
Russ, there aren't too many other 4 Hall of Fames we got to do, is there?
Yeah, we'll come up with a few more for you. Definitely. Yeah, we'll have a petition. Yeah, but if you get a chance to go to the Speedway, take the tour and go to that museum out there. It is fantastic. You'll see things in that museum that you had only heard about, and things you didn't even know existed. And Bob is such a big part of that now. And I know Ron Watson would welcome you with open arms. He's the director. He's been on this show before, and he's got a first-rate facility out there. Just absolutely incredible.
You want to be sure that you know that it's Sports Car Hall of Fame, Road Racing Hall, but it's mostly NASCAR, and so you get to see both of everything you want to see. It's NASCAR and this Hall of Fame thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the show. We do everything that's related to any kind of racing competition, and they're the same thing out there. They have, I think, airplanes, boats, you name it. And they need a snowmobile in there. That would be about the only thing they don't have. I think that would work out real well. In fact, I think we have somebody working on a snowmobile. As a matter
I
of
raced
fact.
snowmobiles once.
Did you really?
Yes.
You see, he raced everything. Yeah, have you ever raced a camel?
Thank you, no.
Okay, just checking. Okay, we're going to break away for just a minute or two, and we will be right back with more from Mr. Bob Tullius.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Racing's original North Turn is our broadcast headquarters. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area, Racing's Original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's Original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. We're back from where it all began, Racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm here with Bob Tullius, the grand master of sports car racing, the road course extraordinaire professor. Could we say that? You're a professor, I guess, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, I'm no, but my son is.
Okay. All right.
If that counts.
Yes.
He teaches law at Emory-Riddle.
Yeah, we're here at the North Turn and North Turn Restaurant, and if you want some good food, in fact, after we're done here, I'm going to get me a Mad Marion McDonald sandwich named after one of the old beach racers, and you kind of immerse yourself in the history of the sport on the actual spot where it took place. You can't get any better than that, so you got to give it a shot. Absolutely. You did a little NASCAR racing with the Dart too, didn't you? Yeah, in the old GT series.
With the Grand American Series, but that was with a Pontiac.
Oh,
no, excuse me.
Okay.
It was with a Javelin.
Oh yeah.
But before I
Yeah.
get into that,
Okay.
you mentioned you talk about the race here on the beach and so on over the years. I was here for the 1955 race.
Wow.
And I watched Fireball Roberts whip on everybody with his Buick Century.
That's right.
And I was I worked for a Buick dealer, and I had a Buick Century just like his here at that race.
Wow.
But, there's always a but. The race, he was disqualified. There were 2 Chrysler 300s in the race. They finished second and third. And at that time, Bill Sr. was promoting, so to speak, and he wanted to be sure that the race was promoted properly. Anyhow, Fireball was disqualified for some nebulous reason, and the two Chrysler Corporation cars were first and second. On the record books, that's the way it seems. But I was here, and I knew what happened.
Yeah, on the post-race inspection, they tore the whole engine apart, and they happened to find that the end of the push rods were ground. Well, that wasn't a stock piece of equipment. That had been a modified piece of equipment, and that was against NASCAR rules, and that's all they needed to disqualify that car. And that would have been the only beach race that Fireball, the hometown hero, ever won. He never won another beach race here. But he did okay on the big track, so you can't feel too bad for him, right? Yeah. But the other day, and I don't mean to be dropping names, but I spoke on the phone to Greg Moore, son of Bud Moore, and he wanted me to send his regards and say that you and his dad's cars went head-to-head on several occasions.
Oh, yeah. Well, he did a program with for Ford with the Mercury Cougars, and we raced against each other a lot. But I only did the Trans Am for the 66 and 67, and when Chrysler announced to me during the winter of 66, 67 that they weren't going to participate, I had committed to Quaker State to do the series, so I had to do it. And it cost me a lot of money to do that, and there was no participation on Chrysler's part, which was really silly. They didn't, I don't know why, except that they were big into NASCAR at that point and didn't realize the potential of being successful, which we were. We didn't win the championship that year, and it was a technicality, actually, because Chrysler never entered our cars as a team. Ford did. So every time Ford won, no matter who it was, they got credit for the win. If we had entered our car as a team, our cars, the two Barracudas and the Dart, as a team, we would have won the championship. But that's hindsight.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Well, going back to the early days again, stepping backwards just a bit, where did the Group 44 come from, and how come the numbers were backwards?
Well, it's not a very interesting story, but I had used 44 in my car during my early my early SCCA days, and we were at Sebring, as a matter of fact, 1963 for Triumph, and they gave me one of the cars from there, and I took it home and made it into a race car, and off to Lime Rock one morning, I should say, drove all night, and with my wife and my son, Russ, in the back seat sleeping, and got to the racetrack the next morning and had to cut out the numbers, and we put them on with contact paper, as you well know, and my wife put the pattern on upside down. And it came out backwards. So I told her to do another one backwards, and I put it on the deck lid to hope that nobody would notice. And, of course, they did notice, and it became a trademark for me and my company, and it became Group 44 Incorporated Backwards Fours.
Wow. What a great story. And now I've been studying your stuff for a long time, and I purposely steered away from reading about that because I wanted to find out today, like you guys. So it's the first time I ever heard that story.
That's how it happened. And as I said, it wasn't spectacular, but it was that way. Actually, one of the times that it became much more prominent was that Road and Track put a picture in one of the races at Road America, and they took a picture of my car backward from the back, and it showed the backwards 44s, which is the only place it had, not on the doors or the hood. The only place that had the backwards numbers were on the trunk lid. Took a picture of it somehow, and they published it, and they said in the caption, "No, we didn't put the negative backwards. It was Tullius that put it backwards."
Great stuff.
Became an important part of our activities, and when we made the name of the corporation, the company, Dick Gilmartin and I and Brian Firstenau, three of us, we decided I didn't want it to be Bob Tullius Racing. I was not into that. I didn't want it to be that way. Anyhow, Gilmartin was writing the name Group 44 on a napkin, and that's the way it turned out.
It worked out great. Yeah, it's funny how life, how life kind of falls together, and little things like the numbers backwards, along with the Dodge Dart. That's one thing that grabbed my attention too. Is I wonder why those numbers are backwards, and that will cause folks to become fans for a long time to come. That's for sure. And we're going to break here for just another minute or so. I might have caught Shane the Bolt off. No, you're on top of things. Okay. All right, this will only take a second. We'll be right back, folks.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. At Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees, it's all about making you happy. Beach Boys Embroidery can customize your athletic golf apparel, caps, hats, badges, buttons, magnets, backpacks, bags, totes, clocks, watches, and of course, T-shirts. Sure, they're at 2033 South Ridgewood Avenue in South Daytona, and they're waiting for you to call now. 386-255-5880. Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Yay! And the lovely and talented Bob Tullius. And yeah, there's so much to this guy's life and career. There's no way you can pack it into an hour. So we're going to have to talk maybe about But you had a lot of success with a little Mustang, didn't you?
I'm sorry?
Didn't you drive a Mustang for a while?
No, I'm talking about the Mustang airplane.
Oh, geez. Of course. Duh. Now, this was, boy, you talk about, hey, I've been gone, okay? It takes a while to get back in.
During the break, I reminded him about the Mustang, and he thought it was a car I was talking about. But he knows about the Mustang.
Of course. But this thing, we spoke a few weeks ago, and one of the things that struck me about our conversation is that you said that the race driving was okay because you felt like you were really meant to do that, and it came easily to you. And but the thing you're most proud of is your aviation career. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, but probably very few of you in the audience are old enough to remember the Second World War, and I remember this. I remember very well. Anyhow, during that war, there was an airplane called the P-51 Mustang, and there are about 120 of them still flying, and I had one for 13 years and did over 150 air shows and spent over 1,600 hours flying it, and that to me was the most important accomplishment of my life. And now I don't mean to demean the racing part. I'm talking about personal accomplishments, and the reason I say that is because I was born to do what I did as a profession. I had no choices in what I did in my life once I found out what I was going to be doing. No choices. I wasn't told how to drive a race car. I had no other explanation than whoever was guiding my life was teaching me how to drive a race car. I was born to drive a race car. They asked me when I first knew. It was when the day I was born, early December of 1930.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
but flying that airplane was a sizable accomplishment in my personal way, and I enjoyed it a great deal. It was the race cars were very fast, and they had a lot of horsepower, 700-800 horsepower. But this thing had 1,400 horsepower, and it was a bear to fly. Thank you.
That's awesome. Now, I heard a story about what became of that airplane. Where's your Mustang today?
Oh, well, when I bought it, it had been owned by several people. I bought it from a fellow in Caracas, Venezuela, and I flew it for a long time, as I mentioned. And at the time I bought it, or early afterwards, I decided that it was never going to be flown by anybody else but me, and ended up donated it to the Royal Air Force Museum in London, England, where it resides today, as a memorial to all the young men who flew those airplanes and other types in Europe during the war and died to make sure that we could do what we're doing today.
Wow, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, that Mustang, my gosh, what a fantastic plane. I remember I had a clear Mustang. It was about this big. It was a model, and the body was clear. So you put everything together, the framework and the engine and everything, and you could see through there with the machine guns, and that was one of the coolest things I had as a kid. But you had a real one. I don't know too many people that had a real one. That's pretty nice.
When you started down the runway with that 1,600 horsepower, you got to the point where there was no return. You will fly. You will fly. If you don't, you will die.
Well, Jack Roush has one too, doesn't he? Yeah. Who was faster?
Well, Jack and I are good friends, have been for years. And he always wanted a Mustang. When he knew that I had one, and every time he saw me, which was quite often, he used to say some very expletive words about me.
Oh, man.
Oh, and I flew it in formation with a B-17 bomber, a World War II bomber, over the Watkin Glen race at the start of the race, where there was flag and the Star Spangled Banner and that sort of thing. And he was on the ground. And the next day he called me up and he used those expletives. It was very, very well that day.
A little jealousy there, huh?
Yeah.
Well, how did the deal with Jaguar come about?
Well, I had worked for the British car company for a long time, and they all went belly up except Jaguar. And Jaguar was selling 3,000 cars a year, and it didn't pay the bills. They were losing $1 million a month.
Oh, Lord.
And Michael Dale, who was the vice president and a great enthusiast, a racing enthusiast, in fact, he won a national championship in the Bug-Eye Sprite. He was the vice president of the company. They decided the best way to make sure that they were going to continue in the business was to go racing, and we did. And it's a long story, and one which would take a long time. It would take the hour here to talk to you about it. But I ended up in London. In Coventry, in January of 1981, and signed off on the program. I was in the Caribbean sailing, and I had to get to London at a certain time on Monday, and I took the Concorde from Washington D.C. to London at 3 hours and 30 minutes, and I made my appointment with them, and I had planned to take a regular airplane to go home because it was so expensive to fly that Concorde. I was so happy with it, I flew home on the Concorde as well.
Gave yourself a little treat there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that Jaguar GTP car, it's down there in the hangar in Edgewater, and it really does look like it's doing 200 miles an hour just sitting there. It is the sleekest, cleanest design I think I've ever seen. And very interesting about the paint job on that car, I heard that you had an opportunity to be sponsored by another company, right?
Oh yes, I had a deal working with Budweiser. Not Budweiser. Listen to me, Miller, Lowenbrow. They wanted to sponsor me. The guy that handled all that was a good friend of mine, a young lad who I had known as a youngster, and he was the son of a vice president of Quaker State, so he knew the quality of our activities, and he worked for Miller Brewing Company, and he was the guy that spent all that money, and he came to me and said, we want it, and we put it together, and it went to Jaguar with it on the last Friday of 1 week, and to sign the contract, and the president of Jaguar said, no. And I said, well, you just cost me a lot of money. And he said, how much? And I told him, and he said, he upped my budget.
Oh, gee.
And we didn't, and we didn't get, the deal didn't get done. And I was really disappointed. And so was this young lad that I had worked with to get this thing put together. And he said, what am I going to do? And I said, here's a phone number. Call this fellow. His name is Al Holbert, and he will be interested. And thereby came the Holbert Lowenbrow 962 that won the won the IMSA championship that year.
Wow!
He got a $500,000 sponsorship as a gift from Group 44.
Jeez. Yeah. Did he ever send you a Christmas card after that?
Well, we were best friends. It didn't, and I didn't hold it over his head, but I did mention it from time to time.
I would hope so. Yes. So it could have been the Lowenbrow Tullius Jaguar. Yeah. But the car looks so nice the way it is. So you didn't need to be glopping it up with all that other lettering.
I always tell people that we didn't win all the races that we would like to have won. We won, I think, 12 or 13 races in the 3 or 4 years that we did that. But we didn't win all the races we wanted to, but we always won the beauty contest.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, that was us too. You know, we always ran last with our little dirt tracker. The one night I ran next to last, they protested me because they figured there must have been something wrong with the car. but the car always looked good. You know, that's it. Yeah, if you can't run good, at least look good. That's
Well,
sure.
the drag racers used to say, if it don't go, chrome it.
If it don't go, chrome it. There you go. Well, Group 44, they're over a 25-year period. You're responsible for about 300 wins.
Well, that came because we raced 4 sports cars in 4 classes throughout a major portion of our activities. I had close to 100 victories of my own.
Wow.
But the company all won, without me, a total of near 400. and or 300. I don't know what the real number is, but it's a big number anyhow.
Okay.
And I had only thing I always wished that if I had been a NASCAR guy and was that successful, Richard Petty and I would be competitors.
That's right. Well, you took Le Mans one year too, right?
Well, that's a little bit of a misnomer, but Le Mans had decided they wanted to attract IMSA GTP cars from here, so they created a class, and we won our class at Le Mans, but we did not win overall. We were, I think, 13th that year.
Wow. Well, this is the closest I've ever been to a Le Mans winner, so it's okay by me. I think we're going to take one more quick break, and we'll be back in just a second.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Welcome to the Janet Hale Foundation website. With this website, we hope to broaden our reach, to find someone like you to help us on our journey. Janet's journey started 40 years ago to ensure that all children had a toy under the tree at Christmas. Today, thousands of toys and clothing are donated for underprivileged kids. We need your help to continue our journey. Tour this website and find the Donate Now button. A small gesture can make a big difference in a young life. We need your help. Visit us on Facebook, Janet Hale Foundation, or call 386-256-0752. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you. Here with Bob Tullius, quickly running out of time, and there's still too much more to talk about. Talking about the Janet Hale Foundation, yeah, what a great deal. I mean, yeah, we all were kids. We all had Christmas, and you probably had one Christmas that might have been a clinker. Maybe you didn't get what you wanted or something, but there's kids out there that sometimes don't get anything. So anything you can do to help Janet and her foundation will be greatly appreciated, and you know it'll warm the hearts of the little bitty ones too. So we just got word that Haas Ellington, his son, Little Haas, is watching us on Facebook. You remember Haas, who was a great team owner that Donnie Allison drove for, the Hawaiian Tropic team, and Donnie's one of the classy guys, one of our alumni, if you will. But who was your toughest competitor back in the day, Bob?
Everybody that beat me.
There you go.
And I don't mind. I didn't mind losing, but I hated losing. Just didn't like that much. Right. But the competitors, Bob Sharp was a Datsun competitor. In the Trans Am days, I had several competitors that were really good at working at it. Peter Gregg, he was in one class, and we got to be good friends. But I don't recall having specifically a top competitor. There were competitors everywhere.
Sure. Where would you place Hurley Haywood in that group?
Oh, Hurley and I are best friends. He's a good guy, and he drove for me for 5 years, put a scratch on the car once
Really?
in the 5 years, and, you know, he won Le Mans 3 or 4 times and Daytona 24-hour. But Hurley, we were at Amelia Island. He was being interviewed at a Porsche. This is funny. He was being at a Porsche thing, and they asked him what was his most satisfying racing experience. He said, driving for Group 44.
Oh, right. That's high praise. Oh, my gosh. Is there anything that you never got to do? I know you drove a NASCAR modified one time. I don't think there's a whole lot that you ever didn't try.
Oh, yeah, that modified experience. By the way, that modified experience was put together by a guy named Jack Arute.
Oh,
you know that name? Anybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's on NASCAR radio at this point. He's an old friend. And he put together a ride for me and a small block modified race at Stafford Springs. And I think the idea was to embarrass the sports car guy. I met him. He used to come to Lime Rock once in a while, and of course I raced at Lime Rock all the time. And he decided that he needed to have a sports car guy that we could tell everybody didn't do very well. Anyhow, he got me a ride, and I went to practice at Thompson Speedway one day, and just a couple of days before the race, and I got used to the car okay. And the driver who had driven the car regularly had won the the track championship at Thompson, and he was watching me. And I came in and I said, I asked him if he could give me some helpful hints about how to do this thing. He looked at me and he said, "You don't need any helpful hints." And so we went to Stafford Springs, and to make a long story short, there was they starting positions out of a hat, so the lady that owned the car picked up, and I was second row on the outside. No, on the inside. Sorry. And the flag went down, and I somehow or another, I was going down the straight, and I didn't hear anything. And I discovered I was in the lead, and it was a major catastrophe from my viewpoint. I thought, whoa, what the hell am I going to do here? And I kept stabbing it and steering it as best I could. And about the 10th lap or so, it was a 15-lap qualifier, and at about the 10th lap or so, I thought, geez, I'm going to look in the mirror. I was afraid to look in the mirror before that. And oh, geez, those guys are about a half a straight way behind me, and they're all racing, and I've got a nice lead. And next couple laps, I began hearing somebody nearby, and he got under me a little bit into turn one. I thought, and coming out of two, he bumped me in the behind. I thought, uh-oh, he wants to pass. So next lap or so, which was the 13th or so lap, and I moved over and let him pass me, and I finished second in this race.
Wow.
And I was just elated. And I came in, I was sort of disappointed, I should say. And I came in the pits, and the crew for my car was all jumping up and down. They were racing, what a great job. And I said, well, I didn't win the race. I mean, let's not get carried away, boy. He said, did you know who you were racing? And I said, no. And he was last year's modified champion.
Oh, gee. Was it Jerry Cook?
Yes.
Ah.
It was Jerry Cook.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of the name, but thank you.
Okay.
I should have known to ask you to give me the... It was Jerry
Six-time
Cook.
NASCAR champ.
Yeah.
And now he's in the Hall of Fame, and you just about skunked him. So they didn't ask you back, I guess, did they?
Well, I tried to get the owner wanted me to drive at the next race, which was in Martinsville, and that was all I had to do it. But the guy that was driving for him before said, I don't think I want to have that happen. So I never got to drive it again, but I was really in my element there. I really enjoyed that. But we started out in the main, and the first lap coming into turn one, started out in the second row, I think. And going into turn one, the throttle stuck. And I went zooming into the railing and crashed. And I was really disappointed. I went into they towed me into the lot, and I thought, uh-oh, throttle sticking, right? They're not going to believe me because you never hear, after the throttle has stuck, when you hit something, it comes unstuck, right? So you never get substantiated. But I happened to be looking in, and those guys that have ever been, this was a Ford Anglia or something, I forget. But you know the tunnel cover has a flange on it that bolts up to the firewall, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody know that, and the girls don't, but the guys do.
Right.
And I had pushed the throttle so hard that it went past the lip of that thing and stuck underneath it. When I went into turn one, it didn't come off.
Oh,
and it was still there. And I called over the guy that owned the car. His name was Buddha. He was a big guy. And I said, look, there it is. And it was still stuck under there, so I was vindicated.
You vindicated.
But I loved that race. I loved it.
Oh, yeah, you could have really made a career out of that, huh?
I would have done it in a heartbeat.
No kidding. Yep. Awesome. Well, this has been an incredible time, and it's gone by way too quick. There's a few folks we got to have to thank, though, like Shane Stanton, the Volts over there, our engineer, and the intern, Richmond Carter, the Grand Poobah, Mike Multane, our assistant field director, Rhonda over there, my wife, Gwen, who's known as Buzz Boss. Buzz Boss? Is that right? All right, if you think so. And then, of course, we got the Flash back there, Bill Watson, our photographer. And Walt, Rhonda's better half, isn't around here, but he is our roadie. And then I am your humble servant. It says, I am so worthy. No, I'm not worthy. But anything you want to throw my way, that's fine. Oh, and our social director, Elizabeth, who's Miss Bake a Cake, she's gone this week, so we're hoping that she'll return so that she can load us up on some more carbs. And then Lenny Marsh, our media relations. What's he up to anyway? I haven't seen him in a while. No? Did the check bounce? Well, oh, okay. All right. Anyway, he's the scribe. We have a great crew. You guys are awesome. We have so many folks that are regulars, and we thank you so much for your support. And the folks that are watching us on Facebook Live, it really is a humbling thing to know the folks are out there all over the world watching us. And another big round of applause for Bob Tullius. Absolutely fantastic. We hope we can do it again.
The Legends of Racing radio show originates live from the very spot where beach racing began, Racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. Join us next time for the Legends of Racing radio show with Buzz McKim.